Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive into French grammar.
It's great to be here.
Today we're focusing on adverbs and adverbial phrases. Those essential tools that help you express yourself with, like real nuance and precision in French.
Exactly.
It's going to be especially helpful, I think, for those of you aiming for that pronunciator certificate, that feeling of adding those final brush strokes to your French masterpiece.
That's a great way to put it, because these seemingly small grammatical elements can completely transform the way your sentences sound and the meaning that they carry.
Absolutely. So let's start with the basics. How do we actually form these adverbs in French?
All right, well, let's imagine you have the adjective lent, which means slow, right? To change it into an adverb describing how something's done slowly, we add lentement to its feminine form.
Okay.
So lent becomes lente, and then voilà. With the lent, you have lentement, meaning slowly.
Lentement. I like that. So it's kind of like a little formula we can use, right? Like to add that how element to our verbs.
Precisely. And this pattern, it repeats itself beautifully with many adjectives. Think facilement for easily, or rapidement for quickly. This salmon ending, you'll see it everywhere.
Yeah, and it seems pretty intuitive so far. But I'm sure French wouldn't be French without a few curveballs.
Of course not. We'll definitely get to those rule-breaking irregular adverbs a little later.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. But first things first, where do these adverbs actually go in a French sentence? Does placement really matter that much?
Oh, it absolutely does. And it's a key difference between French and English sentence structures. You see, in English, you might put an adverb before a verb, but in French, it usually goes after the verb. It's modifying.
Interesting. So we have to kind of flip things around.
Right. For instance, you'd say, il parle clairement, meaning he speaks clearly.
Okay, so il parle clairement. Got it.
Right.
So if I were to say like clairement il parle, would that sound totally off in French?
It would sound quite unusual, like you're really trying to emphasize the clarity above all else.
Like secret French code. I love it. Okay, so understanding adverb placement is really about getting that natural flow of the language.
Precisely. It's like learning the rhythm of the language.
The rhythm, I like that. So we've got our regular adverbs down, and we know where they belong in a sentence. Now bring on those rebels, those irregular adverbs. You mentioned them earlier.
All right, so these are the adverbs that they just decided not to play by the rapidement rules.
The rebels with a cause, I guess.
That's one way to put it, often for historical reasons.
Oh, history.
The two most common ones that you'll encounter are bien, meaning well, and then you have mal, meaning badly.
Okay, so bien and mal. Two very important adverbs to remember, and they don't follow the regular pattern.
Precisely.
So it's not just about adding a suffix. There's a whole story behind these words.
Exactly.
But how do I know when to use bien versus mal? What's the trick?
Well, it really depends on the context of what you're trying to describe. Bien is used when something is done in a positive way or skillfully, and mal comes into play when something's done poorly or incorrectly.
Okay, so it's about the quality of the action.
Exactly.
So if I wanted to say, like, she sings well, I would say, elle chante bien.
Elle chante bien. Perfect.
And if someone's dancing is a little off, I might say, il danse mal.
Exactly. Il danse mal. You're getting it.
This is great. Mastering these irregulars feels like a big step towards expressing myself more naturally in French.
Absolutely. And you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. I'm starting to feel more confident with these adverbs. It's like they're tools I can use to fine-tune my French. But let's make things a bit more challenging. What about when we want to express the intensity of an action or quality? How do trop and assez fit into this picture?
Those are great additions to our adverb toolkit. Assez meaning enough, and trop meaning too much. They actually act as adverbs themselves, modifying other adverbs or even adjectives.
So they're like adverb enhancers.
Exactly. They add that extra layer of intensity.
Okay, I need an example. I'm a visual learner.
All right. Imagine you're at a cafe in Paris, and the waiter is maybe moving a little too quickly. You could say, il parle trop vite, which means he speaks too quickly.
Il parle trop vite. Okay? And what about assez?
Let's say you're impressed by a friend's intelligence. You might say, elle est assez intelligente, meaning she is intelligent enough.
Elle est assez intelligente. Got it. So trop and assez are like volume knobs, dialing up or down the intensity.
That's a great analogy.
I'm loving these. So we've tackled single adverbs like champs. But what happens when we want to express manner in a more elaborate way? like using a whole phrase instead of a single word.
You're talking about adverbial phrases, right?
Yes, like painting with words instead of just using single brushstrokes.
Exactly. And they were like beautiful descriptive phrases that function as a single adverb to enrich your expression.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I need some examples. Give me some of those phrases that bring French to life.
All right. Picture a car speeding down the Champs-Élysées. You could say it's moving à toute vitesse, at full speed.
Ooh, à toute vitesse. I like that.
Or imagine someone handling a delicate antique with avec soin, meaning carefully.
Avec soin.
Okay. You can even create a sense of drama with à peine, barely. Or emphasize something with extrêmement, extremely.
Extreme. I love how much imagery and detail these phrases add. It's like going from a simple sketch to a vibrant painting.
That's exactly what they do. They give your French that extra flair and personality.
They're like secret ingredients in a recipe.
Precisely. They make your language delicious.
I'm getting so excited about these. But I have a feeling we've only just scratched the surface of what we can do with adverbs and adverbial phrases.
You're absolutely right. We've got much more to explore.
This is going to be fun.
It is. Welcome back to our deep dive. We're uncovering all those little hidden gems of French grammar that can really take your fluency to the next level.
Exactly. And it's not just about memorizing rules.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding the why and using those adverbs like a pro.
I like that. Using them with finesse.
Finesse. That's the word. So in the last part, we were talking about trop and assez.
Yes.
To kind of fine-tune the intensity of our adverbs and adjectives.
Mm-hmm.
But what about when we want to explain the specific method or purpose of an action? Like saying how something's done, not just how much.
That's where the phrases de manière à and de façon à come in handy.
De manière à and de façon à. It does sound interesting. What do they mean exactly?
They both mean in such a way as to, or so as to, and they introduce the method or the purpose behind an action very elegantly.
Ooh, elegant. I like that. But can you give me an example? You know how my brain works.
Absolutely. Let's say you're at a conference and you're listening to a speaker who is so clear and engaging. You could say, Elle parle de manière à être comprise, meaning she speaks in such a way as to be understood.
Elle parle de manière à être comprise. Wow, that sounds so much more sophisticated than just saying she speaks clearly.
Exactly. It's not just about understanding what she's saying, but also appreciating her skillful delivery.
I see. So de manière adds a layer of appreciation for the technique. And you mentioned de façon. Can we use them interchangeably?
Absolutely. They convey the same meaning. So if you wanted to praise someone's efficient work style, you could say Il travaille de façon à finir rapidement, meaning he works in a way to finish quickly.
Il travaille de façon à finir rapidement.
Perfect. Okay. I'm really starting to see how these phrases add a touch of elegance to my French. It's like leveling up my communication skills.
It is.
Now, we've talked about adverbs, modifying verbs, and adjectives, even other adverbs. Can they modify entire phrases or sentences, though? I'm thinking about words like heureusement, fortunately, probablement, probably, and peut-être, maybe. Do those fit into this adverb puzzle?
You're right on track. Those are excellent examples. You've just touched on sentence modifiers, adverbs that can add a whole layer of commentary or information to the entire sentence, not just one word.
So if I were to say heureusement il n'a pas plu, meaning fortunately didn't rain, heureusement isn't describing how it didn't rain. It's more like adding my own feeling of relief about the situation. Exactly. You're adding your personal touch to the sentence, expressing your own perspective.
That's so cool. And probablement and peut-être, how do they modify sentences?
Probablement and peut-être are really useful for expressing different degrees of probability or certainty. Let's say you're making plans with a friend. You could say, Il viendra probablement demain, meaning he will probably come tomorrow, which expresses a high degree of confidence. But if you're less certain, you might say, Peut-être qu'il viendra demain. Maybe he will come tomorrow, leaving some room for doubt.
Wow. It's amazing how one little word can change the whole tone of a sentence.
Right.
Okay, before we move on, there's something I wanted to ask you about. I came across this term while I was prepping for this deep dive. Interrogative adverbs.
Yes.
What are those, and how do they fit into all of this?
Those are question words that help us get specific information.
Okay.
And some of them can specifically ask about the manner in which something is done. They're essential for, navigating those curious conversations in French.
So like how? I'm guessing comment is one of those interrogative adverbs that helps us dig a little deeper.
You got it. Comment is the most common and most versatile one. If you want to ask, how do you say this in French? You would say, comment dit-on cela en français?
Comment dit-on cela en français?
Perfect. So these interrogative adverbs, they're like those keys that unlock a whole world of questions and exploration.
That's a great way to think about
I
it.
love it. Okay, we've covered so much ground. Single adverbs, those elegant adverbial phrases, even sentence modifiers. But there's one more piece of the adverb puzzle that I'm curious about. Comparisons.
Okay.
We talked about comparative and superlative adverbs earlier, but what about when we want to use aussi as to compare actions?
Great question. OC is your go-to word for expressing equality or similarity in comparisons. When you're comparing adverbs, you use OC before the adverb followed by que, and then the second part of the comparison.
That's like a little formula.
It is.
Aussi plus the adverb que, and then the thing we're comparing it to.
So if I wanted to say, like, she sings as well as him, I would say, elle chante aussi bien que lui.
Elle chante aussi bien que lui. You nailed it.
This is awesome. It's like I'm building this incredible toolbox of adverbs and unlocking all these new levels of expression in French.
You are.
Now, are there any common mistakes that French learners should watch out for when using aussi in comparisons? Any little traps we can help our listeners avoid?
Absolutely. One thing to remember is that aussi is specifically used for comparisons of equality.
Okay.
But if you want to talk about something being superior, you would use plus. And moins is for comparisons of inferiority.
So aussi for equals plus, for greater, and moins for lesser.
Precisely. Mastering those distinctions really helps refine your meaning.
It's like adding those final touches to my French, making sure everything is crystal clear.
Exactly. It's like you said, painting with precision, using those adverbs to create a vivid and accurate picture of your thoughts.
This deep dive has been such a revelation. It's amazing how much depth there is to these seemingly simple grammatical concepts.
I agree. And you know what? We're not done yet.
Oh, there's more.
There's more. There are even more fascinating sides to French adverbs and adverbial phrases waiting to be uncovered.
I can't wait.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll wrap up our deep dive with even more insights and practical tips to help you on your French language journey.
And we're back for the grand finale of our adverb adventure. It feels like we've been on this incredible journey exploring all the nuances of French expression.
It has been quite a journey, hasn't it? And believe it or not, we still have a few more treasures to uncover in the world of French adverbs.
Really? I'm all ears. What other linguistic gems are you ready to share?
Well, let's talk about those undercover adverbs, the adjectives that sometimes act as adverbs.
With adjectives leading a double life.
Exactly, adding a bit of mystery to French grammar.
Okay, you've got me hooked. Give me an example.
Let's take the word express, which means deliberately or on purpose. It usually functions as an adjective describing a noun, but you can also use it as an adverb to modify a verb.
So it's like a word with a secret identity.
Precisely.
Okay, so how would I use express as an adverb?
If you wanted to say he did it on purpose, you could simply say il a fait exprès.
Il l'a fait exprès. So exprès is adding that extra information about how the action was performed.
Exactly. It's stepping outside its usual adjective role and taking on the role of an adverb.
That's so cool. It's like French grammar has all these secret passages and hidden doors.
It does.
Are there any other examples of these dual identity words?
There are. Think of the word pied, meaning foot. You'll often see it used adverbially in expressions like aller à pied, meaning to go on foot.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one, aller à pied. So even though pied is a noun, it's actually working as an adverb in that phrase.
Exactly. It's all about understanding how words interact within a sentence.
These little details are so fascinating. It's like we're piecing together this intricate puzzle of French grammar.
I like that analogy. And with each piece we add, our understanding grows deeper.
Okay, before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about. The infamous inversion.
Ah, yes. Inversion. A common challenge for French learners.
Especially when it comes to word order. I know inversion can be tricky.
Absolutely. Especially when using those interrogative adverbs in questions.
You mean those question words like comment, how, quand, when, and où, where?
Exactly. And when you use these words to ask about the manner in which something's done, you often need to invert the subject and verb.
Okay, I need an example to visualize this.
Of course. Let's say you're at a cooking class and you want to ask the instructor, how do you cook this dish? In French, you would say, comment cuisinez-vous ce plat?
Comment cuisinez-vous ce plat? Okay, so the verb cuisiner comes before the subject pronoun vous.
Precisely. That inverted structure is what signals that you're asking a question.
So it's like a little grammatical dance, flipping the word order around.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow. This deep dive has been incredible. We've covered so much ground from forming basic adverbs to understanding their placement and even tackling those tricky irregulars. We explored those elegant adverbial phrases and sentence modifiers, and even navigated the twists and turns of comparisons and inversions.
It's been a pleasure to explore these intricacies with you. I hope our listeners feel inspired to put their newfound adverb knowledge to use.
I know I do, and for those of you working towards that pronunciator certificate, don't forget about the Pronunciator Library module. It's an amazing resource for practicing these concepts.
Absolutely. Keep practicing and keep exploring, and most importantly, keep that passion for French alive.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of French adverbs and adverbial phrases. We've covered a ton of ground, but remember, this is just the beginning. The more you explore, the more you'll discover about the beauty and richness of the French language.
Au revoir and bon courage on your language learning adventures.
Merci and à bientôt.